Today in the News Digest. A cynical violation of all norms of human morality and international law. That is how ICC indicted war criminal Vladimir Putin described Iranian ayatollah Khomeini elimination. Russia threatens to leave peace negotiations if the entire Donbas Oblast, including all the lands that have never been occupied, is not handed to the Kremlin. Watch a Russian Shadow Fleet tanker arrested by joint Belgium and France special op. Learn the thrilling details in our story for you. The Kremlin once called Venezuela an ally and promised to help, and it didn't. Today, Russia continues to issue standard condemnations after the elimination of Iran's dictator Ali Khamenei and several other senior Iranian officials in U.S.-Israeli strikes. Russia, again, talks and again offers no other support.
Russia's standard responses continue to highlight the limitations of its ability to support Iran and the asymmetry of Russian-Iranian relations. The Kremlin is likely to remain constrained by its own military actions in Ukraine and its desire to obtain concessions from the U.S. without sacrificing its own goals in Ukraine. From the report of Institute for the Study of War,
Russian dictator Putin indeed has invested a lot to deepen military and strategic ties with Iran in recent years, calling the assassination of his Iranian counterpart, dictator Ayatollah Khamenei, I quote, a cynical violation of all norms of human morality and international law, which is certainly a lovely thing to hear from someone who literally became the epitome of lawlessness, being indicted by the International Criminal Court for genocide against Ukrainian children. And while Russia has no other choice but to take the term hypocrisy to a new low, Ukraine is not wasting time.
Всі зараз бачать, що наш досвід захисту.
Everyone can now see that our experience in defense is, in many respects, irreplaceable. We are ready to share this experience and help those nations that helped Ukraine this winter and throughout this war. Europe must finally ensure real strength for itself, a real capability to defend its sky, its land, and its sea from any type of attack.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has stated that his country will involve Ukrainian experts to help allies to shoot down Iranian drones. It is necessary to build sufficient production volumes of air defense, though, both against drones and against ballistics.
And we will also bring experts from Ukraine together with our own experts to help Gulf partners shoot down Iranian drones attacking them.
The US and Israel are rushing to finish off Iran as their air defense missile stocks run low. The Wall Street Journal reports on that. Stocks of interceptor missiles and precision-guided munitions are dwindling rapidly. A protracted war threatens to leave the West without air defense on other fronts, and the situation is becoming critical, and Ukrainian experience is really hard to overestimate here. One more thing on the matter. While the US and Israel are doing their best to destroy Iran's military potential by taking out their military facilities, Russia and Iran use a completely different tactic. As Russia and Iran both have one core thing in common: terror. They both use terror as a tool of warfare. Suit yourself. Over the 3 months of this winter, Russia launched over 14,500 guided bombs, over 700 missiles, and almost 19,000 assault drones into Ukraine, targeting civilian objects and infrastructure. You are welcome to do the estimation math for the rest of the year. But one thing is clear: Ukraine is not going to be a sitting duck. During February 2026, Ukrainian air defense destroyed over 30,000 airborne targets overall. We are talking about hundreds of cruise missiles, tens of ballistic missiles, anti-ship missiles, also guided aircraft missiles. All that constitutes a staggering figure of as much as 30,000 means of death sent by Russia at Ukraine during in just 30 days. Russia threatens to exit peace talks if Ukraine does not agree to give up the entirety of Donbas. According to Bloomberg, Russia is ready to sign a draft memorandum on a peace agreement if Ukraine agrees to withdraw its troops from Donetsk Oblast. As per Moscow, only after this, a trilateral meeting between leaders of the US, Ukraine, and Russia could take place quickly to confirm an agreement. This is nothing but a usual and clear attempt of manipulation to make Ukraine let get on the land that is not even occupied. No matter how hard they try, Russian troops just can't seize new territory on the ground.
Вони не відмовилися від захоплення.
They have not given up on the seizure of the Donetsk region. They are still planning the seizure of a buffer zone in the Kharkiv and Sumy regions. They expect to advance as much as possible into the Dnipro and Zaporizhia regions. As of now, I objectively do not see any possibilities for the Russians to realize these plans within the next 6 months. Over the past year, they occupied less than 1% of the total territory of Ukraine and killed more than 450,000 of their own servicemen. According to the previous dynamics, they will need approximately 1.5 years for this, and a resource roughly equal to the size of the current grouping of forces of the Russian Federation on the territory of Ukraine.
UAV operators eliminated over 30,000 Russian occupiers this winter. It was reported by the commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces, Robert Magyar Brathy. Every third destroyed target is the result of UAV operators' work. The best result was in December, more than 12,000 Russian soldiers. In addition to manpower, UAV units destroyed a significant amount of enemy weaponry and equipment, including air defense assets of the Russian army. While the U.S. are giving Russians second biggest in the world army by postponing sanctions and asset sales of the second big Russian oil giant Lukoil, Ukrainian sanctions step in action. UAVs target Lukoil oil refinery in Russian Ukhta, more than 1,700 kilometers from Ukraine. Another oil site visited by Ukrainian sanctions carriers, UAV's Sheskharis oil terminal, was attacked last night in Russia's Novorossiysk. Local residents post videos where a large-scale fire has broken out in the area of the facility. The terminal is one of the largest oil transshipment complexes in southern Russia, used for handling crude oil and petroleum products. It is involved in supplying the Russian armed forces conducting combat operations in Ukraine. Russia is losing its main source for supplying war machine also at the sea. For the first time, the Belgian armed forces, with support from France, have intercepted and arrested a tanker from Russia's shadow fleet.
Belgian armed forces, with support from France, have for the first time intercepted a tanker from Russia's shadow fleet, wrote Belgian Defense Minister Theo Franken on social network X. During the operation codenamed Blue Intruder, Belgian servicemen boarded the oil tanker, took control of it, and escorted the vessel to the port of Zeebrugge for further arrest. Belgium's foreign minister emphasized that all actions are lawful and carried out in accordance with international sanctions and UN maritime law.
This operation was carried out within the International Task Force on the Shadow Fleet, alongside our G7, Nordic, and Baltic partners. The legal framework is clear. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea and the International Maritime Organization support action against vessels operating under false or no flag. International law is on our side, and we will use it fully. Maxime Prévost, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Belgium, on X.
With these actions, Belgium is demonstrating leadership in strengthening European security, wrote Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha on social network X. The diplomat called on Kyiv's partners in the EU to follow Belgium's example and enforce sanctions. According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, for more effective implementation of restrictions, the European Union needs to improve its legislation.
It is also important to modernize European legislation so that tankers carrying Russian oil are not just stopped but seized, with their oil repurposed for Europe's security. We must be resolute. Russia operates like a mafia organization, and the response must match that reality. If they reject the rules for the sake of war, the rules must foresee a clear and firm answer. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on X.
This is not the first case of detaining a vessel from Russia's shadow fleet in European waters. At the end of 2025, Finnish authorities took control of the ship Fitzberg, which, besides selling oil, was also used for covert maritime operations. Such detentions deter potential buyers of Russian oil and hit the aggressor country's revenues, analysts note.
This physical detention, the boarding of tankers carrying Russian cargo by military personnel from different countries, these are now the most effective sanctions. If you ask why? Because first of all, buyers of Russian oil see all this and do not want corresponding problems on their heads. That's one side. On the other side, all this is seen by insurance companies, global insurance companies that insure these cargoes. And without insurance, the cargo cannot move at all physically. So for Russia, this means a double blow.
Russia can no longer sell enough oil to cover its incredibly inflated military expenditures. The aggressor country ended 2025 with a budget deficit of more than 5.5 trillion rubles, or 2.6% of GDP. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense is mobilizing internal and international capabilities to reduce Russia's oil production and exports, stated the head of the ministry, Mikhailo Fedorov.
The Ministry of Defense team is actively engaging in the economic war. The task is to work on blocking Russia's shadow fleet. We have taken this on as a systemic project with a large, responsible team and expertise. Russia launches missiles at us straight from the conveyor. That is why they have increased exports of crude oil, because they need cash. Their budget deficit is growing. That is why we need to keep pressing, because we are approaching the pain point. Mikhailo Fedorov, Minister of Defense of Ukraine, at a meeting with journalists.
The European Union is preparing to adopt new measures against Russia's oil and gas sector. The 20th sanctions package envisages a full ban on maritime services for transporting Russian oil, expanding the list of shadow fleet vessels to 640 and restricting their servicing, reported by Andriy Dmytrenko, UATV News.
That's all for today's News Digest. Stay informed, stay sharp. And if you found this update useful, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. See you tomorrow.